I'm going to bring on Brian Mast. Brian Mast is an Afghani vet. He's now running for Congress in Florida against the Democrats. Congressman Patrick Murphy currently holds a seat and is leaving it vacant. Brian joins us now from Florida. Hi, Brian.
How you doing, sir?
Very good. Tell me a little bit why you want to run for Congress. I've met you. You're a really straight-ahead, honest, clean-cut kind of guy. And I can't imagine why you would want to go into that pit of vipers.
Well, I try to be. I hope that's definitely the mark that the military left on me. And I can tell you, running for Congress is certainly never anything that I planned on doing. But after I was injured and I'm laying in a hospital bed talking to my wife, I'm telling her, I don't think I can go through life thinking that the best defense I ever give the United States of America is in my past. The best thing I ever do for this country, as any service member does, we define ourselves in service to this country, and to think that that's in my past. It just was a way that I couldn't think that I could go through life, and I decided, I think, for that to be in my future, my best defense, that I thought ultimately it would be in public office.
Okay, so tell me about, first of all, losing your legs. You're in Afghanistan. How's this happen?
Well, I'm a bomb technician by trade, or they call us EOD, or Explosive Ordnance Disposal. And the long and the short of that story is I was a bomb tech in Special Operations, and we were on one of the missions that we only conduct under the cover of darkness. And I identified a place that I thought there was very likely an improvised explosive device. I went through a lot of methods that I used to search for IEDs. I didn't find one, and ultimately that IED found me, and it resulted in the loss of 2 legs and a finger.
Wow, what was that like? You wake up in the hospital. Do you remember getting hit and laying there and being brought to the hospital, or what are your
I remember
memories?
the whole experience pretty vividly. It happened, like I said, all under the cover of darkness, and it's unfortunate, but the guys I served with, we have a lot of experience with dealing with this, so they did a great job in saving my life. But when I remembered the explosion, it was this blinding flash in my eyes, and I remember tumbling through the air and ultimately landing on my back, and I wasn't sure if I got hit or one of the other guys, maybe triggered a device, and I was just close enough to also be affected by it. But as I'm laying there and wiping all the mud and the dirt, the soot of the explosives out of my eyes, I could hear my guys talking about me. They were radioing up my call sign saying, EOD is hit, EOD is down. And there's a lot of other things that went on in between there. I'll tell you the most painful thing probably I can ever remember in life is them putting tourniquets on me. And eventually they got me back to a medevac helicopter. And I think it's one of the most important things that I remember from that night. And it's the last thing that I remember them telling me is basically my guys rendered me one last salute as they loaded me onto that bird, and they told me that I was going to be okay. And I like to think that I am today.
So now you're waking up in the hospital. Your wife is there. That has to be a remarkable moment when you realize I'm not going to walk again, or I don't have legs anymore. You are walking now. And you didn't specifically think I'm going to run for Congress. You were thinking, like all soldiers do, I got to get back into the fight. I serve. But you weren't thinking specifically, I'm going to run for a public office, or were you?
No, not immediately at that time. In fact, I often tell people, I'm almost embarrassed about it to some degree. I think of it as such a point of being naive that when I initially woke up in that hospital, I honestly believed that I was going to slap on a pair of prosthetics. I'm amputated above the knees on both legs. I was going to slap on a pair of prosthetics, do physical therapy for a couple weeks, and I was going to be out the door on the next rotation to Afghanistan, conducting missions again with my guys. I didn't really realize immediately that, this was a completely new normal to life, and that, really at this point I would be a detriment to the mission, at least in the same capacity that I was operating before. But eventually, like I said, when I did come to that conclusion that it just wasn't in the cards to kick indoors anymore, that's when I decided, hey, I can't let this be the greatest contribution that I make to America. I can't let my time in combat be the best example that I ever set for my kids or anything else. And that's where I said, I needed to find an upward trajectory.
So then tell me again, because it's a nest of vipers. Tell me what you think you can do in Congress.
Well, you're absolutely right. And I'll tell you, I think the 3 most important things that I bring to Congress are things that I've learned in the military. Number one, the best leaders that I ever had in the military, they never asked their soldiers to do something that they wouldn't do themselves. And that's unfortunately the climate that we see going on in Washington, D.C. Number two, the things that we do, really have real life and death consequences for those that surround us. Now, I learned that under the duress of combat, but that's something that every legislator needs to remember, because the legislation that they're putting forward, it's real names, it's real faces, it's real people, it's real small businesses. It's not ambiguous. And I think the most important thing that I learned, in the military and during my time in combat that I'm going to bring to Congress is this, that not everybody chooses to serve America in whatever capacity, but if you do make that your choice to serve the United States of America, then there's only one way to do it, and that's without regard for personal gain and without regard for personal consequence, like every one of my brothers have done on the battlefield. I tell people I've lost about 67 pretty close friends in our theaters to date. And that's how those brothers felt. It wasn't doing what was best for themselves. It was doing what was best for the United States of America.
Let me talk about a couple of issues. You have seen the VA healthcare system firsthand. How much better has it gotten? Right. How much better has it gotten now that the president knows there's a problem?
It hasn't gotten any better. And now we also have the VA is it's a perfect model for what government-run healthcare looks like. You can ask any veteran for however many generations past to say, tell me experience about being serviced by the VA, and that's exactly what Obamacare is going to look like for every other American out there that falls underneath of this. I'll give you a quick example of my own service or of my own time with the VA. I use a cane every single day of my life to get around. And one of the most recent times that I went to the VA, I went there because I needed a new cane. I broke my old cane, and they said, okay, you need to go see your primary care physician to get a script. So I make an appointment. And then my primary care physician says, no, you need to go get a script from physical therapy. So then I make an appointment with physical therapy. And then physical therapy tells me, you need to take a class first on how to use a cane, and then we'll write you a script for it. And it was at that point that I basically walked out and said, don't worry, I'll go buy my own cane. But that's the kind of bureaucracy that you go through with this system. The VA does a lot of things, like home loans and education benefits and things like that. But as an institution of health care, they are a failure, and they will never be the best choice for veterans.
Tell me about, if you were in Congress now, what would you be saying about this deal with Iran?
The Iran deal is an absolutely horrible deal. I mean, this is what the government's asking us to do if we want to put it in terms of most of our own lives. It'd be like me going down to the car dealership, getting ready to sign a contract with them, and them saying, here's 30 pages of the contract, but here's 5 pages of the contract that I'm not going to show you. Now sign this contract. And that's basically what the government is expecting us to buy. And if this deal goes through, then absolutely President Obama is going to have blood on his hands for funding the largest state sponsor of terror. I was a bomb technician, as I told you. I've disarmed improvised explosive devices, and this is exactly what Iran and their proxies, whether you're talking about, Assad, Hezbollah, whatever proxy you want to name of theirs, have been training and providing to those insurgents that are fighting against our soldiers on the battlefield. And it's an absolute disgrace that this is something that our government is undertaking. I think most of us, we say you're somewhat made up by the company that you keep. And it says something about us if we're starting to keep the company of Iran.
Give me a couple of names of heroes or people that you look up to that you say, I want to be more like that, living or dead.
I'll start with the number one in my life. And I'm going to say that's my father. It's a common answer for a lot of people, but I'll say this. I learned after I was injured that my parents were never too old to influence me, and I was never too old to be influenced by them. When I was injured, the first thing that my father said to me, aside from telling me that he loved me and he was glad I was okay, was he said, Brian, you can't let this keep you down. You got to find a way to pick yourself up and get back out there and get back to work. He said, you can't let your kids see you sitting on your butt because they will think that that's an okay way to go through life. And I take that with me every single day, absolutely. So he's definitely one of my heroes. I can tell you one of my favorites is General Patton, if you want to go to somebody that's not living, General Patton, hands down. I could listen to, his speech to the Third Army, I don't know how many times, but it's a great one.
How's your soul, Brian?
It's warm and it's anxious with everything that's going on here, but I'm going into this with my eyes, absolutely as wide open as I can, and also hoping that this is going to be a completely positive experience, although I don't hold my breath for it. So.
How's your wife?
She is taking it all in stride as, she's a good Army wife. She's been used to really having to hold the fort down, to take care of everything from mowing the lawn to paying the bills. And that's how military wives are, like so many of our other women out there. They're strong, and they know what to do. And that's how she is. She just takes it in stride, and she's always got my back. And I couldn't say I love her more. She's a great woman.
Brian Mast, running for Congress in South Florida. Mast for Congress, Mast, M-A-S-T, for Congress.com. Brian, I appreciate it. Good talking to you, and the best of luck to you.
Yes, sir. I'll look forward to speaking again.
You got it. Brian Mast, congressional candidate, Mast for Congress.com.
Got him.
He's great.